If we try to believe in anything greater than a miracle, it wouldn't be this difficult. If we try to be a negative bull, yeah, we could be taking control, yeah. If we try to believe in anything greater than a miracle.
Hello, welcome to the stream, everybody. I'm glad a few people have joined me. Today we are going to be converting from 19 to 17. Quite a few people have been asking me questions about it, and I figured it would be easier just to do a stream, start to finish, the entire process. So here we go. Here we have the it's taken from the FS19 base game. This is the Matty Ferguson telehandler. I felt like doing this one today. So this is a skinned model, and it's UDIM, so it's a good demonstration piece for all the processes which you would possibly need to do in converting any model, because obviously most mods don't use skin models, it's mostly giants that do. So over the next, I don't know how long it'll take me, 2 days, maybe 3, I shall gradually put this through all the processes to get it into 17, starting with textures, model splitting, and then going through how I in-game it, and then the XML. So hopefully finally the store image and finishing off the mod. So to begin with, all I've done so far is I've opened up the FS19 mod in GE 7.1 for 17, and I have removed all of the FS19 shaders in the material editing panel. So this is essentially just the model, and it's got the normal map and the specular map applied. All your decals, which have diffuse textures, are showing through. So this is about as ready as it will be. So what I do is I open up my folder where I've put everything. So we've got the i3D, textures, etc. And I know that this has an exterior model texture, the dashboard, decals, and an interior model texture. So to make the diffuse textures, we need to know that obviously there's two materials here for the actual model, that outside and the inside textures. So we'll need 2 exports of those materials. So I start by simply creating 2 transform groups to put those parts in with each texture. Hello, a few more people joined us, nice to see. So we've got in here, we'll have several parts, so that needs to go in, cameras doesn't, lights, what are these textures using? So those will need to be kept, none of these do though. These textures, these, I don't think, no, so we don't need those either. Cabin parts, it's just decals, window HUDs, just numbers, decal, white hoods. So that's outside as well, so we keep that. Do that. Attach your joints. Just nodes. Trigger, don't need exhaust, hydraulics. So you don't need the decals because they already work. Don't need these, but we will need these lights here because those use that texture, but not those, not the lenses. Decals, and I don't think, so that's everything on that bit. I believe one of these is dummy on, yeah, it's got the collisions. We wouldn't want those collisions going in because that'll mess up the 3D model a bit, require a bit more work. Let's just check everything's working nicely. It appears so. Mirrors, nope. Dashboard, nope. Don't need any of these. Visual parts. So there's the interior. So that can go over to that. Windows. Depending on the type of mod, the windows vary. For example, this one uses the diffuse for Windows. But you'll quite easily find someone to use UDIM system for Windows, in which case you'll also need to do the Windows as part of your Blender conversion. I don't need to on this one, which saves me a bit of work. But doing windows isn't too bad. I don't need these raster patterns, decals, and this I do need. So all of that is the exterior model, and all of this is the interior model. So now we've got our two parts, no collisions or anything, so it's just the model. So what I do is I select those, file, export selection. Oh, luckily we don't need the wear in 17, so that will be removed. Hello Fast, hello Tom. Thank you for dropping by. Hopefully this will be useful. So we'll just call this 19 model and export as an OBJ into the folder. Save. Alright. Don't need this anymore, so we can delete those, save, and close GE. I've already got a fresh Blender file open with some scene group collections in here for our parts. So we shall go ahead and import OBJ, find using this, where we save that, MF, 19 model. And it is important when importing into Blender. You can ask a question about Blender, yeah? I mean, see if I can answer it. But yeah, it's important when you're importing to open this geometry tab and make sure you also tick split by group, because if you don't, it'll import it all as one big mesh, whereas we want to keep it in those little individual meshes, which it was in GE. So when we import this, get the loady thing, and there we go. So it's imported. I like to play around with little material settings for the view material. So there we have our 3D model, and I'm going to put everything in here. What I like to do, the good thing about this is also if you miss little decals like this, see we don't want these, it's already separated those using that method, so we can just delete those. Save us a bit of time. Now I've missed out the rear axle, which is annoying. I need something else. I've UDIM'd see the faces. What do you mean by see the faces? As in like it's got loads of sharp edges and stuff? I mean, I'm not very familiar with UDIM itself. I see I've forgotten these, so I'll just quickly grab these bits. Go in here. Just remove those bolt decals. And just do a quick export of this as well. Got axle. Don't need to save that. Go in here, file, import, OBJ, axle. Make sure that's ticked, and there we go. It doesn't matter about this not being center. It would matter if you were baking new things like an AO texture, but we're not, because we've already got the spec of the texture, so we're just going to do a diffuse. With that issue fast, the only thing I could suggest is what I'm about to show, using the edge split modifier. If you've already done that, I wouldn't know. You have to ask someone with a bit more experience. So all of these parts here, see this is the interior, we don't want this in this little group for simplicity's sake, so we can turn off that, so everything now is just the outside material. And what I'll do Yeah, for fast, this is the modifier. Do the edge split modifier, put it on 60, and you can see as I vary this number, it's to do with like the sharpness of edges. So as you change that number, it gradually smooths out the edges. I go for 60. I think 60 is a nice number. That might be your issue if you haven't done that. So you just leave that on there. So then we'll go and do the same thing on the exterior. Add modifier, split, 60. Now you could go through each individual one and tick them all, or you could select all the parts and then select the one you've applied the modifier to, and then hit Ctrl L to make links, and then do modifiers, and it applies it to all of them, which saves you a lot of time. So we have some parts like this which are already split off, but mostly we have this big bit, the main mesh, which is like 90% of the model. That doesn't matter for the moment, because what we are going to do is the texture first, because that's easier to do with one big mesh rather than loads of little meshes. So what you want to do is, you see, because obviously we imported the axle separately, on the materials tab, make sure it's all got the same material, default OBJ. And this will help when we come to apply all of our parts, textures to the parts. And then interior, give this material, because obviously it's a different one. So what we'll do is we'll rename this into MF90947S material, like that. And then this one, interior material, if I can spell. That's better. So, do a quick save. Wouldn't want to lose all our progress. Well, not that we've made so much so far. The next step is in the shading tab. Just what you want to do is set this to texture. Nothing changes at the moment, but we'll select our exterior material, and in this the node wrangling pad at the bottom here, you want to go image texture, and you want to plug this into the base color of the model, and you want to open and go to where you've got your textures applied. So, I mean, this is just a demonstration to show that this is the correct texture for this material. This is the normal texture. Obviously you can see it all lines up nicely with the edges, all the details in the right places, etc. So now we know that's there. What you want to do is open up that texture in whatever photo editing thing you've got. I've got Paint.net, you've got Photoshop, etc. And you want to check the size of this texture. So this is a 4K by 2K texture. So when we're baking our diffuse texture, hello Cargan, thank you for watching. We need to keep that same size. For example, we don't want to do a 2x2 texture because that would distort. You want to keep the same sizes. So what you do is you do a new, and then using the little math calculator in Blender, you don't have to type it out. You can just do ×4 for 4K and ×2 for 2K, and we'll call this MF9407S underscore diffuse. No, that's not an underscore, is it? It's a dash. There we go. You don't want alpha, turn alpha off. I just leave it as black on the background. So obviously this can change this. That because we've got texture plugged in for our viewport. If you turn it off and put on random, there we go. So there's all the separate parts with different colours. But so texture. At the moment, obviously, there's no detail on this texture. So if we just bake the texture, it would just be a solid black texture. Just make that disappear. So what we want to start doing is the colours. And with UDIM, it's all in the UV editing tab. So if we just disable this, this is the UDIM grid. As you can see, you've got all these different bits of mesh spread out. Oh, sorry, this was this thing here, UV sync selection. If you turn that off, you have to select it in the viewport, and then it highlights in here. If you click on this, you can select it in the UV editor, and it appears on here, the other way around. And this is really important for this step. For specular maps, you need GIMP. Yes, GIMP or Photoshop you will need eventually. At the moment, we're not doing that. But when it comes to it, you will need GIMP or Photoshop to compile specular textures. So for the stuff to display, you have to be in edit mode on the model. So all the vertices, edges and faces are there. And I have this handy document. I shall ask the guy I got it from if I can put a link to it. By a guy called Arsene Software here, and he's used, I think, Hilldrawn, I don't know who he is, but it is a breakdown of the FS19 UDIM Grid. And I should remember it by now because I've done this a few times, but I don't. So I have this open here, and each coordination responds to one of these positions in here. So for example, this is x0, y0 within here, and you can see there's nothing in here. If we look on here, x0, y0 is painted metal, which is a I think it's just like a black, maybe, I'm not entirely sure. But if we go down here, so this is x0, y-1, which is color matte 0 selectable. And if we just expand Blender, go into layout, we can see that the parts we selected in the UV thing, these would be all the red bits on the model, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm 90% certain that everything we've just selected would be red. So it's clear that color matte 0 in this model is red. So what you do is you open up your material panel, and just make this about the same size. Not that big. And you add a new material slot, assign new, and you call it color matte 0. You could call it red if you wanted to, but I prefer to stick with the names on my little cheat sheet so I know exactly what's what, because obviously for New Holland, color matte 0 is going to be blue, John Deere will be green. It changes, so for consistency's sake I keep the name the same. And then obviously you've got more than one thing, so you've got, like here, you've got y0, x1, roughly. I'm pretty sure that would be, yeah, it might be 2 here a bit. And that one responds to x1 painted plastic. So all of that is plastic parts. So that would be a different texture. So color matte 0, make that red quickly, and switch this to I think it's shaded view, yeah, shaded view. So we select what will be color map 0, and then hit assign. So now this is assigned to color map 0 texture and not this base texture. And then the process basically repeats from there. Once you've assigned the material, you can either do them all, so you could do this one, painted plastic, and then the next one, or what I tend to do is once I've assigned those parts, that material, with your mouse over this bit, if you hit G, it selects it all ready to move. So you do Y1, just literally typing Y1, and then it shifts it on the UV grid back into the texture view. Because if it's not in this square, when you come to bake textures, it won't bake onto the texture. It has to be in here for a diffuse, AO, normal, etc. texture to bake. So obviously UDIM, you do that last. You're doing the process the other way around. So now we'll select this lot here, create a new material, new, and this is painted plastic. I'm thinking that this is going to be like a dark grey, almost a black, so I'll just make a dark colour. Assign, and then back over here, G, Y, oh no, it's not Y, is it? See, G, X minus 1, that's back in there. Now this one, that's clearly not 1, that's 2 up. So all of this, which is most of the model, that's Y2 X0. So Y2, painted metal black. Interesting. So again, new material, painted metal black. If I'm going too quick on anything, just say, I'll slow down and explain a bit. So again, this is going to be pure black. So set that to black. Assign G, Y minus 2. So this process repeats. Now you may ask, oh, well, you're painted plastic and you painted metal black. They're both black. Why don't you make those the same material? In theory, you could, but for the best results, you want to keep metals and plastics separate, because in FS17, the specular has a roughness channel in the red, and that controls how shiny a material is. So for example, the outside of a tractor, the bonnet, say it's Massey, it's going to be really shiny red, but the inside's going to be like a dull grey colour for the interior plastics, and that amount of shine is controlled by the red channel in the specular, the roughness, and you can bake that texture in Blender. So we want to keep them all separate materials, so when it comes to texture baking, we can bake that rough channel so we get a really nice shiny red and black metal, but the plastic can be dull and matte, which is a very nice feature of 17, which I don't think is quite as nice as 19. I don't know, I haven't played the game that well, at all really. So next lot of material. So these appear to all be bolts and screws and stuff. So this one is roughly 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's going to be roughly 2, 2. 2, 2, silver rough. So that corresponds nicely to our grid for bolts, because you'd expect bolts to be a silvery material. Silver rough. We'll make that a nice sort of medium grey colour. Assign bolts. You might not see too much change because it's not too much. So I mean, we've already made good progress here, like quite a bit of the model is selected. Now what I have made a mistake of doing actually is not selecting the whole model. So I mean, this is quite a common mistake. I've only selected, oh, that was just changing between the two different views. You've also got a render view, X-ray view. I've only got this main module selected, I haven't got these mudguards selected. So what you do is in object mode, not edit mode, you select all with A, and then what I will do is duplicate with Shift D, right click to drop it, and then with them all still selected, I'll join them together. So we have, let's call it mesh. We take this out of exterior. We have everything in one mesh, which I should have done this earlier actually, is a lot better for this material process. So now, if I go into UV editing on this, you'll see there's some material still here, because obviously we missed them out on the other parts, which is fine. It's all a learning process. Even I make mistakes sometimes. So this is one across. One across is painted plastic. So we select that. Oh, should deselect. Select all that. Assign to painted plastic. And G X minus 1. Now you'll see, I've just assumed it is, but this little bit here clearly isn't part of this. And these, they're part of the steering bars. And steering bars, because we moved that across, we know that was 2 across, which is chrome, which is what you'd expect something like a steering bar to be, nice and shiny. So, chrome, and just set it to a nice bright value, about 0.7 I think. So we'll assign that. So then we can go G X minus 1. Okay. So it's a quick correction of mistaken materials. It's quite easy to do. It's just taking your time, making sure. I mean, obviously, if you weren't too fussed about it being perfect, something like that might not bother you. But obviously, I've done this a few times now, so I'm pretty picky with how it goes. So these obviously are all going to be painted black metals, but we'll just double check that. 2 up, painted metal black, yes. So we'll assign that G Y minus 2, and everything fits nicely. Good. Alright, I'll just take a moment break. I'll be back in a minute or so. Alright, I'm back. Just grabbed a drink. Sorry about that. So, where were we? Yes. So, as you can see, we've only got a few more materials to apply. Other tractors, if it's got loads of parts, might have a lot more materials. I've seen it before where you use the full 7 colour materials. This is only using what appears to be 2. Let's see what this is. So this, petrol filler cap. I'm assuming that this would probably be blue. not entirely sure. If you do have that situation when you're not entirely sure what the colour of material would be, what you can do is like go through images and stuff. But I'm just going to assume that this is blue. So I shall add a new material. Colour nut. So this will be 0, 1, 2. Colour nut 2. Make that nice. So deep blue. That there. Assign that. G y minus 2. Oh no. G went the wrong way. G x minus 2. There we go. Now what you can do as you're doing this is make sure to go back in here and check there's no overlapping faces in your UV, because that will be disastrous for your final textures, because if you have overlapping bits, your texture is going to be ruined. Like if you had a black bit overlapping a red bit, one of them is going to have the wrong colour on. But as we can see, nothing is overlapping so far. If you, say, forgot to remove the collision when you imported from GE, and say there was still a collision over this, so if you had something like that, obviously I've just done this for demo purposes, so you go back into UV editing. You've now got this right in the middle of the UV, this is overlapping. So if you went to bake textures, you just have a massive white square in the middle of your texture. But obviously, using L to select linked, delete that. That's a useful thing which I'll show you in a minute when we come to split the model. Back to UV. So this one is good to look at your model just to see what you're selecting. So this looks like it could be more shiny parts. This is probably 1, 2. This is more chrome. Because we've got a cylinder head, we've got mirrors. Yeah, that's definitely chrome. So we'll just scroll down in here, select our chrome, assign G x minus 3. No. G x minus 2. Let's start that again. G. There we go. Can't type today. That fits in nicely. These parts here. Let's have a look. See what that is. It appears to be. Oh, is that a warning sticker or something? That's probably what. If you're stuck on material like this, what I tend to do is move it first. So we go G, let's go 5. Yes, so that's 5 across. So before you deselect it, obviously we need to do the materials. I'll have a look at our cheat sheet. 5 across, that's rubber. So we'll add a new material. Rubber. Black, and then assign. All the while we haven't deselected it. Ooh, sounds good fast. Doing it maps is that's a fun one, that is. Right, what have we got here? More bolts and nuts. So this is going to be silver rough again, isn't it? Assign. G x minus 2, G y minus 2. Everything is now nicely inside one UV map. So now when we come to bake textures, everything will be there. So now that is essentially UDIM undone. So we are now back to a stage in the model which is an FS19, I guess you could say. So I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. That's good. Now we've got the interior. So this will be basically the same process, but different materials. I mean, there'll be some of the same, like black metal and plastic, but most of them are going to be different. See that this, just colour that 0. I'm not entirely sure what a mass CC looks like, but I doubt it would be red metal. So let's start with a new one. I'll call it colour mat 0, and I'll just put a little interior on the end, and I'll make it, I think I'll go with a brownish colour just as a placeholder, because again I'm not entirely sure what that material actually is. However, all of this, that is one across painted plastic. So this is all plastic parts, and I'm going to assume all black plastic parts, so we can keep the same painted plastic as we had earlier. Two up. That was our black painted metal. I'm going to sign that. But as you can see, it's not everything here. Some of these bits weren't inside that, so I'll have a look and see what these are. Little toggle switches, and that will be 3 up. So 3 up is gear shift plastic. Now, I'm not entirely sure what gear shift plastic is. I'm going to assume it's a yellow. Well, you can change the colour of, yeah, so that's about right. What Var said, something about changing colours of materials. The beauty of this though is you don't have to have exactly the same colours and stuff, you can change it up a bit. So these ones here, let's have a look what that is. It's a little seatbelt buckle, and that's 2-2, so that's silver rough again. Sign that. There we go. These ones here. There's that button there. And the mirror. And that's 2 across, so that's chrome. Let's sign those. Oh, wait, no. This one isn't chrome, this is a colour. So this is colour mask 2. Now the next material, I'm just checking the stream's still going. Oh, 12 viewers, thank you very much. Next material is going to be rubber. So we've got the seals and the floor mat. So I'll assign that. G is -5. And then here, I'm thinking we're probably going to have another colour mask there, and another colour mask there. We'll just go on the top there. Yeah, so this is all different colour materials. So what I'll do is I'll go, because I'm not entirely sure where these line up, because obviously it's not very clear. We'll go G and go X -4. Okay. So all of this is on 3. So I'll go and do colour mat 3. And I'm thinking that this is probably going to be sort of lightish plastic. Go for that 0.5. Assign that. And then all of this on here is colour matted 4. And all of that, again, a lighter plastic, maybe. Down that. Something like that. Obviously, we've got more separate materials, so we can tweak them. Because I'm thinking that's a bit dark, maybe. Do a quick save. So what we've done now is we've applied the materials to both models, both inside and outside. So we are about ready for baking. I mean, obviously I'd like to have a look at some images and start tweaking the colours, but this is how you reverse UDIM and you get ready to bake a diffuse texture. So, diffuse baking. Again, we have all of this in one mesh for the ease of baking textures, and all of this in one mesh for the ease of baking textures. So, with this one, what you want to do, we'll start with the outside first. Go into Shading tab. Put that on this. Nice colours on our model. And you'll see this. Again, no granular, because we had a look earlier at it. We want to copy this texture which we made earlier, the correct size. We want to copy this, just select it, Control Copy. And we want to go to each material, apply it to the model, and we want to paste it in. What this essentially does is let it know that each material is referenced on this texture. So when we hit that bake button, all of these materials will go onto that texture. If you missed one of the textures out, like say if you missed the red out, the red would not bake onto your texture. So this is very important. And now that we've applied the material to everything, this should be nowhere. So if we go nowhere, not the same. If we deselect the model, and if we go to select this, nothing should be selected, which means everything has the material applied to it, which is good. So we've got the model selected, we've got the image texture for each material applied to the model. The next thing to do is to bake. So we'll go into texture painting, and then I'll change the view here. We'll change this to image editor. and this one can be the viewport again. We'll just remove, we'll leave this on actually. So here we have the model. We'll just make interior disappear, and here we have the blank black texture with nothing baked to it. So we go into, this is what's it called, render properties, and you want to change the render engine to cycles. You want to bump up your render to about 1000. I've sort of experimented with it. It doesn't really affect the diffuse, but for something like an AO where you've got the nice shadows, you'd want that to be high. So I might leave that 128 actually for my colour. But if you're doing an AO texture, you want that to be nice and high. Then you go down to bake. If you're in Eve, you won't have a bake option. There's no bake here. I think it's Eve. If you're in cycles, you will. And the first one you see is combined. You don't want combined. So you've got combined, you've got AO, ambient occlusion, shadow, normal, UV, roughness, blah 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 blah. The one you want for the moment is diffuse, and you only want colour, so you can deselect direct and indirect. Now with the UV editor, there we go, UV editor. We've got the UV all on here. As you can see, each individual, these bits are called islands. Each individual island is quite close to each other. So if you had a large margin, it could cause a bit of colour bleed. So I like to put my margin down to about 2 or 3. And then you can leave clear image ticked. So we've got colour, 2 pixels, diffuse. We've got all of the materials with the texture referenced. We've got all of the model selected as one mesh rather than those of individual components. We are pretty much ready to hit bake. If you go over to rendering, you'll be able to see each colour load as it's baked. Now this is a large texture, 4K by 2K, so this will take my computer some time. But if it's a smaller texture like 1K by 1K, it'll be a bit quicker. So I'll just mute myself a moment while this does it, and hopefully we'll see all the colours appear in this blank square if I've done it correctly. Right, so that's worked. Mic's back on. Here we have all of our materials baked nicely into our diffuse texture. We've got the blacks, which obviously you can't distinguish from the background. We've got the silvers, the greys, and blue, and the red. So that's worked beautifully. Now, I've done that quickly just to do a sort of demonstration as such. And what you can do is you can mess around with the colours in Blender, but I find that matching colours in Blender to ones on existing models, like an existing Massey, is quite hard. So what I'll do, I'll go save image as, I'll do it outside in paint.net or something similar. So I've saved that texture. If we go to where it is, we can delete these blend models now. There it is. A nice Massey diffuse texture. Now obviously colours are a bit wrong, so I shall open a Massey I prepared earlier. I didn't prepare any, it just happens that I have one already. This one will do. And there. I'll just grab another Massey texture. So what I'll do is I'll start colour matching. So I'll grab this red, and then holding Shift on Paint, you can you can click on the red to make it paint everything at once as such. Interestingly, yeah, you can't export textures as DDS, which is what Farming Sim uses from Blender, so you have to do a quick save as, which is no biggie. DTX1, DXT1 rather, generate bitmaps. And you can delete the PNG because you don't need it anymore. So we've done the red. Now we'll grab the that's a bit of a weird colour. Maybe we won't grab that. Grab the plasticky grey then. You do find with some of these textures, they're a bit weird. But it's quite easy. I'll just open another one. Go with 7700. There we go. Just a bit there. Go with Massey grey. Oh, see, sometimes if you have your thing set too powerfully, it sort of overrides the whole thing. Yeah, this is the colour I want, so I'll just drop the tolerance down a bit. There we go. So, the proof is in the pudding. Let's do a little test of the materials, just to see what it looks like. Not final or anything. So open this. Diffuse texture. Oh, I wanted that for open. And her set this, and fingers crossed, touch wood, it looks alright. Obviously we need to apply a shader to get rid of the horrible green stuff. Shaders, vehicle shader. Turn it off. So, obviously, as you can see, the blacks are very black. The reds don't have any shine on them at all, neither do the plasticky bits. So it looks pretty awful, but the colours are there, which is the important thing. So I'm quite happy with how those colours have turned out. Obviously, if you are going to do this yourself, the more and more you do it, you get a better judge for what sort of tones of blacks you should be using for what parts and stuff. at the moment I've just done it very basically by eye, rough guessing. But we're not done there, because as I was saying earlier, the specular has the roughness in it, which controls the level of shine, and at the moment there's absolutely no shine at all on this black. Like you can't tell any detail on this. So what we want to do is go back into Blender and start adjusting the roughness of our materials, which is down here in your panel. You can also see it on this panel here, the roughness. Interestingly, the way Blender and Giant's Editor see roughness is inverted. So if you have roughness at 1, so it's 100% roughness, 0% roughness, it's the other way round in Giant's Editor, which is very confusing to think about. But if you think of it as rather how shiny it is instead of rough it is, then it sort of works. So this is black metal, which we're playing around with at the moment, which is quite shiny. And I, through trial and error, have sort of decided that metals have a roughness of about 0.4 and plastics have a roughness of about 0.1. So this is silver rough, we'll set that to 0.4. Chrome is a very shiny metal, so I go for 0.8, 0.9, something like that. Alright, that's going to be a plastic filler cap, so it's going to be plastic, so it's nice and rough. Rubber, which we all know is not shiny at all, really. I sometimes 0, sometimes 0.1, just depends. I think I go with about 0.1. Might actually make that 0.2. Yeah, a bit lighter. Yeah, there we go. So red metal 0.4, painted plastic 0.2, black painted metal 0.4. So that is all of our roughnesses or shininess of the material done. So now we can bake a new texture, which isn't diffuse, it is roughness, which is another option in the bake settings. We've got roughness. So just the same as last time, hit bake, tab over to rendering, and there we go. So you've got your chrome bits, which are really shiny, you've got your metal, which is somewhat shiny, and your plastics, which is less shiny. All controlled by the grayscale of the texture. And this isn't diffuse, this is roughness. Do a quick save. Now this is where you'll need GIMP or Photoshop. This is an FS19 specular texture, and as we all know, in FS19 they added in the wear system, which uses the specular texture just like the dirt system did when they introduced that in FS15. So I'll open this with GIMP, and a specular texture is a composition of a red channel, a green channel and a blue channel, and sometimes an alpha channel. Bitmaps, which can be decomposed in GIMP and in Photoshop, but not in Paint.net using this. So we've got colors, components, decompose. We've got RGB, RGBA. This one doesn't need an alpha layer. Use the alpha layer for the color mask. Sorry for being so far back, but the decals don't show up. Oh, you're doing it along with me, that's good. If the decals don't show up, it's probably because you haven't deselected the shader. And to do that, if you're current with it, I'm just showing now, you want to select your decals and you want to open the material editing window, scroll down and hit the red X next to shader source, so it removes the shader, and then they should pop up. If it's something like a screw decal or a bolt decal, which use this texture here. You need to make sure that you're doing it in the right folder as such. So because I've taken this out of the game files, I've been able to grab these textures here, but for example some mods might not have these. So when you we'll go into the data files, open up a quick vehicle for an example. So let's look at whatever this is. What is this? I don't know. Power flow, the header for the ideal combine. So if we edit this ITVD with Notepad++, we'll see that it's referencing all of the textures which are in this folder here, but it's also referencing these asset folders which are within the shared folder of the game. So to find these, you'd have to sort of go back in the files. What I did, I should have mentioned at the start, what I did with this telehandler is I already went through and made sure I had all of the textures in one folder for them all. So I just copied them out of the folders which they're in according to this file path, and I just put them all in one nice folder. So that might be why they're not showing up. Those are two possibilities. Anyway, back to GIMP. So we want to decompose in RGB. And here we have the three channels. We've got red, green and blue, where they all look vastly different. The red channel is the FS19 wear, so all the edges of the model have been picked out in white, and that's where you get all the paint chipping off. The green channel is the AO, which is for the shadows in the texture, so this is where all the detail gets drawn out, and this is the ambient occlusion, which you can bake from model in Blender. And then the blue channel is the dirt map. Black, no dirt, white, loads of dirt. So, similar to the wear, but different in a way. And obviously, FS17 we don't have the wear, so we want to get rid of this. We want to replace this red channel with a roughness channel. I'll just show you a quick example of what FS17 texture looks like in comparison. So we'll go Lamborghini, specular texture. We'll open this with GIMP. So this is an FS17 tractor texture. As you can see, for starters, there's a lot more yellow and pink as opposed to green and blue, and that is because if we go into components and decompose, go RGB again, we can see that in comparison there is a lot more light grey and dark grey than there is in the wear map, which is why in GE this is looking so dark and flat. It's because there's absolutely no shine on it because it's all black, whereas it's basically the complete opposite in 17. You have it really bright for all the shininess, which is where our roughness texture comes in. So we don't need this anymore. That's also, if you want to remove the shine from a mod, all you have to do is make the red channel of the specular black. And then you can keep the dirt and everything, you just get rid of all the shine. Don't know why people do that, but some people like it. So in our textures we have the roughness. Now what I like to do, because obviously you could just use this, but what I prefer to do is take the normal texture, copy the normal texture, add a new layer, paste that in, put it underneath, and then I select the blue normal map and I do adjustments, saturation, put the saturation on 0%, and then I take the top layer, double click, change the blend mode to overlay, and then you get the detail of the normal map coming through underneath your roughness as such, so you get the nice effect. So with that, you just merge the layers down. You can save it if you want, but it's not important because we'll delete this texture afterwards. You copy this texture, go over to your GIMP, with the red layer selected, paste, and it'll come in. Obviously, you've got to make sure that you baked with the same size texture, otherwise it will like be a tiny thing in the middle, or way too big. And then you do anchor layer down, so it anchors on top of our red. So take note of what this looks like at the moment. Do colours, components, recompose, and boom, is the change. So it's obviously a lot more yellows, and you've got these purples. So if we do colours, not colours, file, overwrite specular, and then we just close these. And then open up again. For some reason, G doesn't like textures made in GIMP, so you have to save it through paint.net, otherwise it flips them upside down. Go back into here, quickly reload our textures, and there you go. We've got the shine, picks out all the detail on the edges of the models. Obviously I'm not entirely happy with this at the moment, because we haven't finished applying textures. Again, this is just a quick test to see what it looked like. So we've got the diffuse, specular, normal. What we haven't got is a cube map. So we'll add our cube map in. Rough cube. Default cube is only for Windows. And as you can see now, that's looking considerably better. Again, not perfect. It never will be perfect because you can't replicate exactly how giants would do it themselves. But it's pretty close. You might find you can play around with the your roughness texture. You might find that this is a bit too, some bits are too bright, some bits are too dark, some bits are not bright enough. Like this bit, I'm not entirely sure if that's bright enough, or shiny enough. So what you can do is texture. You just do black and white. Not black and white, contrast. You can mess around with brightness, you can mess around with contrast, play around with these figures, and just keep replacing the red layer in your specular until you're happy with it. But that's how you bake textures and UDIM, or a model as such. So this, I mean, ignoring the fact that it's a skin mesh and everything, would now be ready for FS17. And you would think that's the hard bit out of the way, but it depends how much you like Blender, because we're not done yet. I guess you could say that this is part 1 finished. See you fast, thank you for dropping by. So we'll open our Blender back up. A quick save. Now we've done our textures, we don't need this anymore, the combined mesh. We want this one. What we can do is remove all these materials. Oh, I want that one though. So none of the materials applied because we've already done that. Obviously you want to be saving as you go through and stuff. Only do this once you've finished with your textures. Shading. We can open up that texture we just made, plug it in. So now we have all the colours applied, but it's through our diffuse texture rather than materials. Looks the same, but obviously we've just got the one material applied, which is a lot easier as we're doing the model splitting, because we have all these separate components, which is great and all, but what we want to be doing is separating this big thing. So all these little individual parts can be turned off visibility for the moment, because they're already separated. There we go. So, edit mode. Now you can switch between vertex mode, edge mode, and face mode by hitting 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard. For what I like to do, you can also do the little things at the top here. I like to go in face mode. You want to select mesh with A, all mesh, and go mesh, clean up, merge by distance. That's remove 12,709 vertices, and what that does is essentially remove double vertexes. It's a very complicated process, and it has been explained to me before, but essentially the model has double vertexes, not everywhere, but in quite a few places when it's put into GE, and you don't want that when you're doing this process here. You want the model as simple as possible. So what that merge by distance does is it does it, so merge by distance, so we've got it set up a very small distance here, so I've got 0.0001 of a meter, so it's basically anything which is directly on top of each other. What you can do is you can bump that up, so we go to 0.1, so we go merge by distance 0.1, and look what that does. So that's everything within 10 centimeters is merged together, which is obviously ruin the model. We don't want that. Quick undo. So now we've got the thing simplified. What you can do is you can start selecting bits of your model with, you can either select individual faces like this. You can hold down shift and select everything, but that's really slow and takes forever. So what you want to be doing is, say for example this wheel hub here, that needs to be separated. You hover over it with your thing, you cursor and hit L. That selects linked, so you can do normals, material, seam, sharp, UV. So obviously that's together on a UV. If you go seam, you're basically selecting sort of finished meshes as such. So this bolt is its own little mesh. Select that, and this one is as well. So you just go around your different parts using this awesome little shortcut tool to select all your parts. So that's everything on this wheel hub selected. So I right click, separate selection. So now we have a little wheel hub separated. What I am going to do is create a new collection and put this in that collection. Seeing as everything in this one is already separated, there's no point. So I'll call this splitting. So there's one wheel hub separated. We'll move on to the next one. And you'll find you gradually speed up the more and more parts you do. Another interesting tip is if you're trying to get the camera to focus on your thing, if you hit decimal place on the numpad, it focuses the camera on your current selection. Very useful. Nice little shortcut. So again, everything's selected, separate selection. What you can do is, as you separate these bits, turn off the visibility. So what you can do here is just separate the bits which you know need to rotate, so the wheel hubs, the main arm, all that. What I like to do also is go in and separate other things. So for example, this rear attacher, I'm not entirely sure if that's separated in Giant's model, or split, whatever you call it with the skinning, but I'd like to separate that so that can slide up and down, because that's very useful. Another thing which people like to do is IC, and I like to do IC. So what I do is I select the door, nice, so that can open independently. Separate selection. Don't think that rear window's open. It's a nice curve thing. Obviously this wiper could be separated, but I'm not going to do the wipers myself. Go these front wheel hubs next. Focus on. Oh. There we go. Selecting all the mesh bits. This bit gets quite repetitive, you'll find, especially on, say, something like a tractor, with all of like the rear hydraulics, front hydraulics, doors, windows, everything. There's a lot of parts on some things. This doesn't have too many parts to separate. Just wondering, implements like cultivators easier or harder to do? Something like a cultivator would be extremely easy to do compared to something like a tractor. Because obviously with a tractor you've got so many moving parts, whereas with a cultivator you might have like 3 hydraulic rams or something. If it's a really small cultivator you might not even have to do any 3D stuff. Alright, so next thing's going to be the main boom, isn't it? So select that. Focus the camera in. All these bits are part of it as well, aren't they? That's good. Oh, hello Sam. Thank you for dropping by. Depending on how much we watched, we've already baked the textures. We are now onto the model splitting. Hopefully it's nice and clear if you want to watch it back and go through. No promises though. I haven't rambled on too much. Select all these bolts, control the main boom, make sure you get everything. Refocus the camera a bit. And across. There we go. I think. Oh, there's a little toggle thing at the bottom of that. Grab that. So that'll do for now. So we'll separate that selection. That's the main arm. Oh, looks like I got most of it. Obviously, this is the sort of inner arm, the bit which second arm, second stage. I don't know. Technical terms. Select all that, I think. What you can do, if you're not entirely sure what's part of what, with a skinned model, is you go back into Giants Editor with your skin model, and you select the bit of the, because obviously skin model works by referencing nodes. So this node here will move the second arm, like this. So we can see which part of the model should be moving. So I can see from this that bit I've just selected shouldn't be. So we'll deselect that. There we go. Separate that. Now you can see there's little bits here which I've missed on the other one. Maybe deliberately, maybe not, who knows. So we can go back, we can select these little bits. I'm not entirely sure what they are, runners or something, guides. Select those, come back into the belly, just like this. thinking also this bit here and that bit there. So we'll separate selection, tell out into object mode. So we'll make the arm visible again. I can make that disappear. So yeah, all these parts line up nicely. So in object mode, just select your two parts you want, holding shift, right click and join. So now that's all one mesh. Then you'll have things like these hydraulics, they'll need separating. And the punch. And then I think there's two back here, yes there is. Oh, so that's another bit, that should have been on the other part. So these, I think they're going to move at the same time, aren't they? Let's have a look. Go into hydraulics, main arm, make that 0 again, so it's 0 translation. Rotate the main arm up, out of the way. Main arm hydraulics. Yes, they both move at the same time. So we can select both of them at the same time. It makes it easier. That's one translation rather than two. Had the same issue when it was coming up. Yes. I mean, little hidden faces. It's inevitable you're going to miss some. I think it's virtually impossible to get everything selected correctly the first time. Oh, just had to rescue the washing from the rain. That was a bit risky. I did get that email, Sam, thank you very much. I haven't edited into it yet. Alright, I think that's good to separate. So what I can do now is just go back through the parts and combine anything which should be together. Excuse me. So that little bit there should be part of that. Join those together. Nice. Quick save. Ooh, muck spreader, that would be quite nice. Alright, so we've obviously got this little header piece. Attach a header to do next. quite a few little parts to it. Focus the camera, maybe a nice little spin around. There we go. I think that's all that's selected. So now we've got all of the essential bits separated. We've also done the door for IC. I think that is about everything. We could do the wipers, but we're not going to do those anyway. Oh, let's do the speaker now. Just double check what that's for. Oh, it's a work line mount, okay. Do a quick separation on that. There we go. So I'm happy with that. I noticed in that able to select stuff from one side, but it selected everything in the circle cursor. Circle cursor? Oh no. I don't know what the circle cursor is. I don't know. So, that's that done. Let's do the interior. What have we got here then? Obviously, steering wheel needs doing. Actually no, before I do that, we haven't baked our texture for this, have we? I knew there was something else. What I will do is have a quick gander on Google Images. Let's see if I can see what it looks like inside. It sounded very dumb saying it out loud. I guess not. In which case, I shall just go. Oh, hello Nathan. I shall go with just typical Massey colours, which is going to be a grey seat. Plastic. Leave that. Silver is fine. Chrome. Colour 2 is fine. Rubber. Colour 3. What's this one? I feel like this one's going to be quite dark. 0.2. And then this one can be a bit lighter. About where it is, maybe a. Yeah, this is like a tan, isn't it? Again, the colour doesn't have to be perfect because we'll be what are you looking for? And just a rough idea of what this looks like inside on 19. Right. There we go. If you could send a pic, that'd be quite nice and useful. I mean, I'm kind of going to go with this, but a picture would be useful. So this is a fabric, so this is going to be pretty rough. G picker's fine, yeah. I am not that fussed. Silver earth, 0.4, chrome, it's fine, colour 2, it's fine. I go about 0.3 for fabric inside. Actually, yeah, it's plastic. Yeah. Happy with that roughness. So I'm waiting for the exact, what do you want to call it, colours. What I can do is the roughness. First though, I need to, oh, it doesn't matter. We already have a diffuse texture. That was a waste of time. Oh, that's very nice. Anyway, it's not a complete waste of time, because I still need to do the roughness of the interior specular. See, sometimes it helps to double check what textures you've got here. What size is it? 2K.
Get hit in my section at 12, gon' find your ass way in New Orleans. Watch out a bit, I'm jugging. Dissect your hand if your hand in my put two in your man if your man keep a looking. Act like a pussy, your panties get tooken. I'm not the type to go fuck with them niggas who fuck with them niggas who stay on some fuck shit. Young and trapping out the bando, from the ceiling fan to the damn floor, trying to stack my money up, cause that's the only way we can go. Tell my mama that I'm okay, see the money coming through the doorway. Got a bad bitch with a lot of money, that's foreplay. Okay, they watching me, they watching me, they watching me. They watching me, they watching me, they watching me. They watching me, they watching me, they watching me. They watching me, they watching me, they watching me.
Mic back on? Yes. Yeah, it's pretty funny how half of their stuff they're like, we use UDIM, but the other half they're like, actually, let's just use diffuse textures. I think it's quite common on their interiors, to be honest. I mean, when I was doing that John Deere, I was quite amazed to find that they hadn't even bothered doing the UDIM on the interior for that, and that's a brand new thing. Even for that, they were using a diffuse texture, or they called it a material ID texture. It's like, it's just diffuse, just call it diffuse texture. Again, what we're doing here is making sure it's set to the right texture, because obviously this texture is a different size to our previous one. It's not the same 4x2, this is a 2x2 texture. So, model selected, everything's referencing the right material. Go to our bake options, it's still on roughness, so we can bake. And as you can see, it's nice and quick. Save as, we'll just call it that. So then we go into this and this, open these up. Just like that. Copy it, add in there, paste, down, desaturate, and overlay there. Now, most of these is pretty dark anyway, there's not many light textures, but you want that just that little bit of variation, because otherwise the interior is going to be very dark and it's not very nice. Interestingly, even though there is an interior diffuse texture, it wasn't referencing it. I don't know why that is. It's confused me a little bit. rough cube on. There we go. So it looks pretty good, but like for example these handles, that's metal, that should be a bit shinier than the plastic bits here, so it does still need some adjustment, which is fine. So we'll open up this specular texture, open with GIMP, disable bitmap loading, colors, components, decompose, RGB. As you can see, red is completely black, which is not what we want. Oh, my bad. Help if I selected the right one. There we go. So I cut that down. Colors, components, recompose. So it makes a significant difference to that one. Override. Discard the changes. Close everything down. Open it up again to do the quick save. And then on GE. Do a quick reload the textures and everything gets that little bit nicer. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to. See you, Sam. Have a good time. So now we've got the bits of metal, that bit shiny, and the plastics are a little bit shinier, but not too much. And like your metal handle here, it's got a nice amount of shine on it. So I'm pretty happy with that. So not doing the diffuse texture on that saved us quite a bit of time. Which means we can go straight into separating model. Obviously, the main one we want to do is the steering wheel. Oh, see that I'm hitting L, but it's not selecting the entire thing. That's because we haven't done the merge by distance on it. There we go. 4,000 vertices removed. So now when I select it, it selects the entire section like that. So that's nice. So that's the steering wheel selected. Separate that. I think we'll leave that. We need these little needles. Those can come with us. Grab those. Other than that, we need the internals of the door since we're doing IC. So that's going to be this. Yep. Internals of the door. Oh, not that one. This handle. A quick look in G. Yep. Not those. But we do need these bits. Good. And that's everything. forgot to double check actually, is these window things. Is there anything on the door? There is. So that's something we'll have to come back to. I'll split those off in a bit. But for the moment, we'll just deal with this inside. I think that's everything. Steering wheel, door, everything else is static, apart from the dials. Good. So now we have our fully split exterior and interior. These bits here we actually can delete because we only needed them. We only need these for the texturing. Now we've done that, we don't need that. All of these bits we have split off from the skinned model, so we do need those. So there we go. We have our insides, we have our outsides, all separated. Now, this isn't necessary, but I'm going to do it. Start renaming every bit. So this is left, rear, nice spelling, wheel, hub, and this one, right. Left door. A front wheel hub. Right front wheel hub. Let's have a look in G, see what that's called. That is called hydraulic attacher. Second arm. You notice as the colours chart start changing as they move up and down the order. Again, you don't have to rename it, but it's a lot nicer to rename the parts, I think, just so you know where they are, especially when you've got so many. I think it's called attachment, yeah. Okay. It's hydraulic help. Main arm, hydraulic main arm. Hydraulic main arm. Oh. That's the punch. Beacon mount. There we go. So all those bits done. This one's steering wheel. Oh. This is dial 1, dial 2. And we'll call this left door. that's named. And the next thing to do is to set the origin points, because at the moment everything has the origin point of here, where that little blue dot is, which isn't very useful for a steering wheel, because the steering wheel wants to rotate here, not down there. So we'll use the steering wheel as an example. What you want to do is obviously focus your camera on it, numpad 0, decimal point. So today go in edit mode. Now you see all these faces creating a nice flat bottom on here. So what you can do is just select, drag them all, go into vertex mode. So you've got all these outside vertexes selected. So if you do snap vertices and you go cursor to selected, moves this little cursor point to the middle point of where you've got everything selected, which for us puts it nicely in the bottom of the base of the steering wheel. So you want to go into object mode, select this object, and you want to go set origin to 3D circle as cursor. Get my words right. So now if we do a quick demo and rotate, it now rotates around this point rather than down there, which is perfect for putting in game. Saves a lot of time in G. So now we just need to replicate this for our other parts. So for example, the door. We want the door to share the same origin point as this door. We have a nice straight edge on this door. What I'm going to do, using ortho mode, if we view it straight down from the top, I'm thinking that wireframe mode, this node here is going to be a good point for it to rotate around. So, because we went in ortho mode and we went in X-ray view, selected the bottom one as well. So just snap, cursor to selected, so it puts it nicely in the middle. And do set origin, 3D cursor, so that rotates around there, like so. Now whilst that cursor's still there, we'll go back to our interior, we'll select the inside parts of the door, and we'll set it to the same point, so they're going to rotate at exactly the same place, which makes it very nice for aligning things. So that's the door done. Go back. Next we've got the dials. These tiny little things. Pretty simple. Just select the vertices at the bottom, cursor to selected, tab, set origin, 3D cursor. Same thing here. Set the vertices, cursor selected, origin to 3D cursor. Nice. So that's all the interior bits done. Turn that off. Now most of the bits in here will, it's important that they have good origin points for the moving parts. So this attacher head, for example. Again, ortho views and little spindle. Sorry about that. Just going to grab another drink. So, go in ortho mode, vertex select, and I'm thinking we want it to in the middle of this circle here. So if we select the vertices around this circle here, in X-ray view obviously, then we get a nice selection, and when we do snap cursor to selected, it goes bang right in the middle there, which will be a perfect rotation point for this. So come out of that, back into shaded view, set origin to 3D cursor. So that's one part done. Next part, I'm thinking probably the main arm, and there's a reason for that. Because this second arm, you could do it so the node's just where it is, but what you really want to do is you want to make it the same as the main arm, so it just slides in and out along the same axes and everything. It's kind of hard to explain, but it makes sense once you're in GE. Same with hydraulic punches. So what we'll do is we'll select this main arm. Now, using this, it's very hard to determine where it should rotate. But if we select this, we've got this perfect little big bolt coming across here. So what I'll do is, using the main model, I'll go into X-ray view, into vertex select, we'll select this bolt here, we'll do cursor to selected, but instead of using this, we want to select the main arm and then do that. So now it's nicely sat there, and whilst it was still there, we'll do this as well. Nice. So that is 1, 2, 3 moving components done. Now we've just got the hydraulics and then the wheel hubs. That's it, I think. Yeah, that'll be it. Oh, maybe this. Actually, no, that shouldn't need to be doing, because this, although this is going to be moving up and down, it's only moving up and down in a straight axis. It's only going up and down, it's not going side to side or rotating. So we don't need to worry about that. The same with the beacon. So it is just these hydraulics. Again, there's no end as such to these hydraulics, but there is a very nicely positioned pickup point here, which we can use again to rotate around, I think. Maybe not. Let's have a look in G. If in doubt, have a check in G. Main arm hydraulic. Let's see. So that doesn't align with that. Okay. What you can do is pull them out and just see roughly where it lines up. They're pretty much right on the end of the shorter one. Okay. In that case, I'm going to disappear, go to the side, X-ray, go with that vertex there. We'll use that as our rotation point. So we want to snap, cursor to selected, set origin 3D cursor. It's quite repetitive, but it is a very important stage. So let's end with this big one at the front. Let's have a look. Main arm, second arm. So just down from the top. So we probably can't get precisely on that. Doesn't matter too much though, as long as it's just close enough. Origins 3D cursor. Origins 3D cursor. So that is every. Oh no, wheels. Almost forgot. What I'll just do with these ones is select the whole thing, and then it puts the center pretty much in the middle. It's a bit low. Could do off that vertex maybe. Let's have another look. Okay, so that's pretty much aligned right in the middle. So we won't go out, we'll go with this one. There we go. So again, cursor selected, origin 3D cursor. This part isn't as such 1917, this is just separating the model at the moment. We've sort of done the hard bit with the textures. But obviously we've got the XML and the GE to do yet. Can't rest on our laurels, etc. Right. Interior, just move all the way. Since we never ended up doing diffuse texture, doesn't matter. There. So we have our two materials applied to multiple bits of the model. We've separated the skinning, we've done our textures, we've done our rotation points. We are now good to export. Notice I've removed all of the textures which were applied, so it's just the material. So select all, well it doesn't really matter, just do a quick save, export, my 3D, like that, export, so now we should have our model here. There we go. Not looking too bad. Ooh, did I forget? I forgot a stage, didn't I? Alright, ignore that. Before you do that, what you want to do is select all your parts, and you want to go into the normals and you want to remove auto smooth. Forgot to do that. Do this before you split it up and save you some time. This won't make too much difference, I don't think, but it makes a slight difference. It's all about shading and stuff. So now I'll export. Create some light. So what we'll do is create a transform group, duplicate, call this exterior. I'll call this one interior. Quick save. And then delete this in there. Is the stream still going nice and strong? It is. That's good. Right. We want to. See, part of the issue is it merges them into the same material. So what we'll do is we'll export selection, and we'll call this exterior parts. I'll export this interior parts. Close. Folder. What we do? Edit Notepad++. Edit with Notepad++. Just check the name. So it's got, yeah, that's nice. And this one, check the name. Alright, so rename this into put interior on the end. Just we can do. I like to do it to make sure, yeah. So it's capital I. Make sure it matches up with your texture names. So then we'll go and open them both. This is just so they have the separate materials, because we don't want overlapping materials, because obviously the exterior is different textures to the interior. Welcome back, Fast. Thank you for tuning in again. Alright, now we'll go ahead and apply our textures we did earlier. We find the right folder. Got a diffuse. We'll put cos power of 50. Spec the texture. Specular. Normal texture. The detail. Cube map. Go with the rough cube. And shader. Vehicle shader. And there we go. So I've got the dirt layer. It's quite nice. Got a nice amount of shine on the metals. Got a nice amount of matte on the plastics. Pretty happy with how that looks. What you can do is you can play around with the cos power. You can whack up to 500. Well, I think that's a bit too much for this model. We'll try 100. Or you can just leave it at 50, which is the Giant's default. And then do top of the interior. There's that inside. Got a nice material name there. Material. And apply diffuse texture, which I didn't realise there was already there. Cost power 50. Apply specular texture. Normal texture. Cube map. And the shader. Nice. There we go. And you might think, oh, there's bits missing and stuff like that. That's because we already had some of the models done. So save these. And then we'll go back to our original. And we'll import. Do these extra lights. And we'll just slide these across. Save. So there we go. And you'll notice that the origin points have worked. So we've got the nice rotating wheels. They might be slightly off, but they can be adjusted. Got the arm rotating in the nice correct spot. We've even got the door, so we can add IC to it, with the interior parts moving as well. All good. All very good. The front bit. Yep. Everything's working nicely. That's how you unskin a model. There's probably more effective ways to do it in Maya, but who's got £6,000 in their back pocket? What we can do now is, you'll notice when you export something from Blender, it translates everything as a rotation of 90 on the x-axis. It's just the difference in the world orientations between GE and Blender. So what you want to do is using the freeze transform function, you can remove that. So go in here, and you right click on it in here, freeze transformations. You don't want to tick translate, you want to click rotate and hit apply, and it removes that 90. Go through all of your parts and just apply these. It doesn't move anything, it just means that that 90 becomes 0, and your little red, green and blue arrows are facing the right way, which obviously is very useful when you're doing moving parts with rotations. So do this to all of them, and close that, and save. Making a trailer. When it goes to tip, the ram only goes up a tiny amount. How to make it go the full way? If it only goes up a tiny amount, but it is moving, I mean, that would imply you've got it referencing to an index which isn't moving with the tipper. But if it's not moving at all, then you need to double check your referencing. if it rotated to 90 before I export to blending. The issue is with the whole like, oh, you could set the rotation to 0 in here. If you do that, depending on where your origin is, say for example this body here, see how this distance is here. If I set that to 0, obviously it looks weird like that, but then it's going to put it, it will always be at 90 basically when you export. The other way of counteracting it is in edit mode, you then flip it by 90. But it's all about where that origin point is, where it's actually rotating around. You need to be really careful with that. I find it's easier just to do it once it's in GE, once you know it's safe as such. So for example, what I'll do now is I shall create copies of these. Copy that, paste that, and we'll call this original. Just wondered do I need to do configs when doing textures like that for 19 Samsung's body extensions? Yeah, that's a good point. So if something has separate parts, for example, so on this one, the rear axle, make it visible, this is a separate part, but it's using the same texture file. So I made sure that I got, right at the start, I got all of the parts which use that texture file. So if you've got configurations where like you've got extendable sides and stuff, if it's using the same texture, make sure you've got that when you export to Blender. Because if you don't, that bit won't get the part of the diffuse texture, so it'll just probably be black. You'll be wondering where. It's a good question. Alright, so there's the original. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is get all of those out and delete the skin mesh. And we want our main body viz to go back in there. All of these to go back within it. Turn that visibility on. And these to go underneath. It is quite some process, yes. I mean, obviously with some mods which aren't skinned, all you have to do is bake the texture. But I wanted to do something which involved model splitting, just to show how I go about doing that as well. Plus, you know, I can release this because it's a Giants mod, whereas if I did, I don't know, one of SIID's John Deere's, I wouldn't have permission to release that afterwards. It was part of the process, isn't it? You learn to do the hard things first, and then easier stuff is easier, isn't it? So now we've got our split model as the base rather than the skin model. Obviously these parts were already separated, so I didn't need to do anything with those, so they're already there. That's good. The lights, those will need doing. These lenses, as you can see, they look really awful, so we'll come back to those. That might be in another one actually, I don't know how long I've been going now. Oh my god, 2 hours. Time flies. So we've got 900 volts. What I will do actually, so the interior, this is the skinned interior, let's delete that. What we'll do is, with these glass windows, so we've got the diffuse, the specular, normal, apply the cube map, shared, default cube, and then shaders, vehicle shader, and then you go down to drop, then you set window. There you go. So now you get nice streaks. So it's the windows. decals. Because part of the decal is see-through, you don't want to apply a cube map, so you go straight to shader. 0. There we go, that's the decals. Yeah, it's a good way of thinking of some quality mods. Well, I've got fed up of using the Merlot or the Manitou, so I'm like, I need a new telehandler. I was thinking about doing up, is it STV modding? I was thinking about doing up his class Scorpion, but I'm not so sure about that. Alright, interestingly here, we've had an issue with the normals on these faces. See how the bottom or the surrounds of this glass piece, like you've got this rim on the inside, that should mostly be on the outside, I think. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but that can be adjusted in a bit. In the meantime, we'll sort everything else out and come back to that. Bolt details, where are these? These little green things are. Put a shader on it. There we go. These bits are already done as such. There's quite a process involved, really. So we'll take our interior, cut that, and we'll paste that inside here. There we go. What we'll do quickly is create a transform group and call this left door. And we'll get this and we'll copy over all the translations. Actually, before we do that, we'll just check and see whether or not I need to do that at all. And the beauty of setting the origin points the same sorry about that. The beauty of setting the origin points the same in Blender for the inside and the outside parts is I can now put this inside the outside bit, set it to 0, and it fits exactly in place. No messing about with position and everything. It fits exactly the same. So look at that. Oh, this is also like kind of an IC tutorial. It's a many things tutorial. I'd love the JD telehandler. Everyone would, wouldn't they? A JD telehandler would be nice. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any good models. I know there's that that one floating around by WBF, and I think is it Jack Swift? I don't know. But I don't know. It's not the best. I've had a look at it in Blender. It's very high poly for what it is. What I'm doing now is creating a transform group inside the door, which sort of negates the position of the door, so it creates a point back at the middle again, so it's negative of everything. So I can grab this window and put it inside, so our glass moves with the door. So now, apart from the decal obviously. That's interesting. Oh, translations on it. There we go. That's how the glass moves with the door as well. I don't think this one splits in half, does it? It's hard to tell. I think it might in real life, but I can't see anywhere on this model where it would. Who knows? Anyway. So obviously, for like something like the decal, I'm going to have to put that through Blender quickly and separate that into different parts. But that, compared to what we've just done, does not take long. Put the left door at the top. There we go. Now one thing my Blender exporter does is it turns off these boxes here, cast shadow map and receive shadow map. Don't know why, it just does. So I have to go through everything I put through Blender and re-tick these little boxes. Under those bits. So all of these bits here, tick the box. Tick them off. Takes a while, but worth it. Mainly because otherwise it doesn't have any shadows. A lot of new turns don't just put in the door anymore. Don't they? Oh. I guess that's probably a safety thing, isn't it? I've imported the model into Blender and it's come in gigantic. Right. What you've done there is you haven't adjusted your export settings. So if you go into GE, if you go File, Preferences, and General, in the middle of the little box which pops up, you'll see a thing. It says Save and Export as Wavefront OBJ. You've got Fulcrum Cold, Only Terrain, and Scale. If you've got it as massive, that means your scale is probably at 100. You want to set that to 1. Hit Apply. Yeah. Other than that, it could just be. That's why you'll see on some pretty poor quality mods the scale is always set at 0.01. It's because they didn't do that, which is quite silly because it's a very basic setting. It's not as if it's top tier. You have to be in the know to know sort of thing. It's just ticking a box. And those are done. And these ones as well. The next thing is probably going to be the steering wheel. So grab that. Cabin parts, steering wheel base, steering wheel. Paste that in there. And hopefully this is pretty close to what we want. Now the rotation's off, and that's because this is the rotation -40. So we'll copy that rotation, go to our model, apply it, and take away the negative. As you can see, that's sitting slightly high, which is fixable. We'll just so another 0, so it's probably going to be 0, 2, 0, 3. Just play around with those. Oh, actually, no, what we can do is check on the decal badge. 4. Okay, so that's too much. 1, 2, 3. 0.35. So then what we do, because we don't really want those values, you can if you want, we use transformations, and this time we'll do translate as well, and apply. There we go. So that's the steering wheel in position. Excellent work. I've tried several times to convert new to old and balked every time. Yeah, it took me a while. I got very frustrated. Before I knew how to use Blender, I tried just doing with GE, and I'd try and do it with Paint as well. And what I used to do was I'd take the specular texture using GIMP. I'd open it up and then I'd take the AO and start painting over it and try and do a sort of workaround, and it never gave good enough results. But just with a tiny bit of Blender knowledge, it's amazing how much you can achieve with that. Like, I'm not great at Blender. I know how to split models and all the export stuff. I can do materials and texturing, but I can't make anything. But you don't need to, really, which is the beauty of it. Plus it comes out looking pretty good. I'm quite pleased with this. I'm not entirely sure on the blacks. I think they might be a bit too dark. Might need a bit more grey. I don't know. But then again, it is black, isn't it? Let's have a look at Google. See what see what a real one looks like. It's probably the best reference, isn't it? See there, that looks a bit more grey than black to me. If anything, it's not really black at all, is it? It's alright though. Just go into Paint and start editing the colours of the a tiny bit of blend. Just start editing the colours. Anyway, let's continue with placing everything. And these dials. So dial 1 is going to be in the dashboard. No, it's not. Cabin parts, indoor HUD. And fuel needle. Ah. Okay. Just copy these over. But make them positive. Copy that. Paste that. Positive. Copy that. Paste that. Positive. The right position? I don't know. I don't think so. In this situation, I reference the original, so lay that over the top. Get my dial. None of these have rotations on them today. No. So what I could do is copy that and I'll paste that inside. And then I'll just knock off these values here, set that at 0, and put this inside that. Thinking. Things like this are the hardest bits to do when you've got really small bits with intricate rotations. that's not lined up at all. Ew. Let's do a few undos. A few more undos. There we go. So, current position of them. Oh, that dashboard needs doing, doesn't it? I've done that one? No, I've done that. This needs a shader applied to it. There we go. Some man released model. I don't. It's a bit stingy that to just straight up copy or take someone else's work even. I don't like that. So that's 5149. This is going to be add. Two 775 772 and from 0.522 to 527. That's minus. And then how's the base of that? Oh, it's in the front. Oh. Alright, let's do this. Put this at 0. And all the rotations off. Okay, maybe not. I'm struggling with these. That is in the right position, but the node is in the wrong place. In which case... let's do this. I think the easiest thing to do is not what I'm doing, so we'll skip these for now. Delete them. We'll go back to the exterior parts. What have we got left to do? So that's everything got left of place. Ooh. Bit of a thunderstorm going on where I am. I'm going to skip all the fiddly little bits which are annoying me. I'm going to go straight on to the big bits. Attach joints, attach frame. Oh. Ooh, why would you do that? And copy that, paste that, and that. So there we got the attacher frame, so that can slide up and down. Nice. Hydraulics. Where's the main arm? So we'll cut this. Hydraulics, main arm. Paste. 0, 0, 0. Interesting. Do a quick undo. I'll just do a copy. And then so this is a that. That's a that. Oh. Let's line this up. Probably makes sense to do the math, wouldn't it? And I'm not thinking today, so we'll just bang it into Google. And the other translation is that. Is that right? No. Maybe wrong software. That was not right. Maybe it's plus. Yes, that's about right, isn't it? There. Brain fart moment over. Second arm. Is that one in place? This is the advantage of doing the origin point. I know it's slightly off to the side, but you know. Try the bone here. Yeah, I've got rain all over my windows now. Catch, rotate. What's the transition on that? And then we'll just go for it. How close is that? Fairly close. No messing around today. Doing everything precisely. Alright, so vertical offset. Ugh, so much math. Shouldn't be this complicated. That. That's the split view. That. Minus that. And 1 and 3. And 3. And we've got this translation hole. Is that the collision you're setting? No, I haven't been setting any collisions. You talking about this box here? That's not the collision, that's just removing all the values in these boxes here, basically. .614. 919. Okay, so now that is in exactly the correct position. Now the collisions I don't need to do, I don't think. I mean, I'll double check, but they should be the same between 19 and 17. Can't see why they would change. But then again, it's Giants, so of course they'd change something pointless like that, wouldn't they? Attach rotator down. Hydraulic. That one. Zero. That's not. That's not really anywhere near it, is it? It's a shame. Well, it's miles off. That is pretty close. I don't think I can be bothered to do the calculations for that, especially since it's not attaching to anything as such, and it's going to be mostly hidden by that. Take the punch. Copy that. Paste that. Copy and paste. And copy and paste. And it's all done now because I need that translation. Yes, beautiful. That's the hydraulic ram done. Oh, we have to make that visible again. Very nice. Ah. Why is that there? That shouldn't be there like that. What's going on here then? Those definitely shouldn't be dangling down like that. I don't think. Is that wrong? There we go. What have we got down here then? Now, just down a bit. Nice. Pretty much a perfect overlap. Take the punch. And copy all the values. Rotation. That. And this is, oh. And there's the button. Ah. Free transformation, translation, rotation, apply, 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 and these ones as well. There. That's the hydraulic arm done. Which leaves the beacon mount. That was easy. And it can go in that. Of course it wouldn't be that simple, would it? Tries to annoy me sometimes. Why put random translation on that? All the wheel hubs. I'm hoping that these line up nicely. These line up nicely. Not bad. Not too bad. Just only a little bit off. We can do with that though. minus paste. Save. Rear left. Copy out. Paste. I wonder how close this one is going to be. I wonder if it'll be exactly the same. That is exactly the same. Huh. Transformations. Apply. Apply. And apply. Close. Boom. These decals need the decal class, decal setting. I'm assuming the inside ones will as well. Doesn't make much of a difference if it did. And that is, I don't want to say it's done, but it's pretty close to being done. So there we have it. All of the mesh split up, apart from this thing, but that doesn't matter anyway because that's not moving. We've done the textures, we've done the model splitting, we've placed it all in GE. It's pretty much there. The only thing we've got to do now is the parts like these lights. These lights are the way they, I don't like the way they did them in 19, but they have sort of done them in this weird style. But basically they emit like a sort of source light instead of the old sort of corona. I can never say that word.
Would it be hard to add dual wheels as a config for the JCB TN Redder?
Nope. That would not be hard, you just need to understand the code. Are you talking about 19 or 17?
The lights look so much better.
They do look better. Unfortunately, they don't really work in 17 that well. I don't think. I mean, how if they didn't have these applied? I don't think they look. Do they look like that in 19? Because I feel like that's really faint. I don't know. Ooh. Okay. So we're using a shared light for the back.
Quick question, how would one UDIM a grill?
Are you talking a grill like this, where it's just a solid colour with a normal matte texture? Or are you talking a grill more like this, which is a modelled one? There's clear. Because, I mean, quite a lot of models still use diffuse textures for grills and stuff. Anything that has, I'll show you on this John Deere. Anything that has like sort of holes in it as such. People do as diffuse textures. So if I load this John Deere up, oh, sorry about that. So this is another conversion I've done. The grills on this are diffuse textures. They look perfectly fine. The lights on this I've also I've done differently. I've put them like more like how they are in 17. Quite happy with this. Anyway, what we'll do is copy all these and paste it into that. Yeah, I'd do it as a diffuse fast. Rear 5, chamber right 01. Right, let's have a look for these. Assets, lights, lizard, rear, what was it? Rear 5, chamber light 01, this one.
Me want now.
So let's see what these ones are. What is this one? Oh yeah. Oh, it's definitely a telehandle light. Alright, so nope. So we want these ones here. Copy those over. We'll paste them in half. Put the textures into the texture folder. And adjust the file path accordingly. I would say this is a pretty important stage. Clear plastic. And shaders. So we will need clear plastic, and that. Oh, there you go. There's the old 19 UDIM stuff. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Import rear chamber 5. Left in that, and right in there. There we go. Obviously, these are dreadful because they do not have textures. So that's another part we're going to have to do textures for, which is fine because it's very small and not very complicated. Just copy all these lenses, copy those, put them in here, because I want to sort of remove all of the emission effects, I guess you could say. I've also got the ones on the boom, haven't we? Right. And these ones are. Copy that over, paste them. And create transform group 4. No, these ones are. We don't need these bits now. We just want. What's this? Not capacity, but no, it does reference these. Okay. So these bits here will make textures for, and these bits will just remove the sort of lighting effect, so we can make a nice sort of glass lens for them, I suppose. Basically, what I've done here on this John Deere, sort of the light cap, whatever you want to call it. So I export these as an OBJ. Call them light. And we'll call this lot render this. Go back into Blender. Create a new light. Lenses, file, import OBJ lights, and import lens. Nice. Start working with these. Dear. Yeah, there are some bits in modding where it's just sometimes just too much, you know. So obviously all these bits we want to UDIM and such, but first apply materials. So these are screws, so they're going to be silver, aren't they? Assign those. Help if we get the right viewport setting on. Y-1. This slot is also going to be silver. Let's just make that different colour so we can distinguish. Silver and silver. black. Make everything inside of light silver. There we go. Put all these back in the grid. Okay. This bit here will make red. What's the key to putting textures into the box? So you've selected your little arrows at the top, UV sync selection. You drag your box around your bit, you hit G on the keyboard, and then you hit Y, and then 1 to go up, -1 to go down, because of the Y axis, and then you hit X, and then -2, -1, whatever, to go across. So it's G, and then axis, and then amount along as such. Oh, I've just deselected. There we go. What are you working on? These, so in 19 they introduced this system where if a light is used over multiple vehicles, so for example this rear light here, instead of making it part of every single vehicle, they do it as a separate light thing with its own textures and everything. So it just loads it instead of in the XML. But obviously that doesn't work in 17. So I've just imported them and now I'm creating textures for them. So they're basically separate model bits. Nothing too complex, but and the others add-ons, but I can just go into them. Sounds right. I mean, if I was doing UDIM myself, I would look into other things, but I'm not. I'm just taking it backwards. So. Let's see what texture size this thing is using. It is 256 by 256. Add texture, erase texture. I'll just leave that as untitled. I'll copy that. And untitled. So it's all set to bake. Select all that. And don't need to pick roughness, it's all the same. Actually, I do. I'll just do a quick, just for the sake of it. Put this into 1. And diffuse, bake, save as image 2.
Could you drop me a link to Discord? Oh.
Off me. Not bad. Alright. Here's what I did earlier. Using this colour here, we shall select the rose rootlets and then fill that. Same that, same as. DDS. And diffuse, same, and 5 since it's transparent.
Are you taking it from 6M or working on two different things?
Oh, I'm not working on the 6M. That's pretty much finished, actually. I just need to do a few tests on it. Yeah, I was just taking that red colour because I've done it. I did that the other day. No point redoing something again. Oh. Components decompose. Open that up briefly. Oh. Components decompose. What's the song called that's on now? Invisible. By Benlock. What was it doing? This one. File. Overwrite. Close. Discard. Discard. Close. And save. Okay. Delete that. Delete that. I don't need that. Let's go in here. We'll apply our new textures. Normal, into the same. Alright. Cube. Shad. Rough cube. And disable the dirt. So that's the back of the housing. Looking good. That's what the rest of it looks like. Now one thing I need to do is apply the modifiers. Oh, first though, turn off auto smooth. Always forget that step. It would also appear yeah, it's merged these two together. There we go. Well, that's that sorted. Modifiers, modifier edge split, 60 degrees. Select all the others, select that one, Control L, join modifiers. There we go. So that's those bits done. Now for the lenses. So these all need these turning off. Right. I'm confused. There's multiple things in this one. Why are they not in Blender? There we go. I've just realised the time. I myself am going to watch the Grand Prix. I might resume the stream later, I don't know, depends how long it's going to take. But you get the idea. Basically putting through his Blender and then put them out the other side. If I don't do any more tonight, I will resume tomorrow in a new stream where I've finished at the moment. So thank you for watching. I hope it's been informative. Where's the overlay thing? Yeah, hopefully this will be useful for people to listen back to, go over and see how I do the process. Thanks very much guys, have a nice day.